disaster is full-blown because Hamas signals it too supports a two-state settlement on the June 67 border. I can quote 100 statements just for convenience's sake. I'll quote a recent one from the Hamas head of the Hamas's political bureau, Khalid Mashal, and he said in March 2008, and I'm quoting him, "There is an opportunity to deal with this conflict in a manner different than Israel, and behind it, the U.S. is dealing with it today. There is an opportunity to achieve a Palestinian national consensus on a political program based on the 1967 borders. And this is an exceptional circumstance in which most Palestinian forces, including Hamas, accept a state on the 1967 borders. There is also an Arab consensus on this demand. This is a historic situation. But, says the leader of Hamas, no one is taking advantage of this opportunity. No one is moving to cooperate with this opportunity. Even this minimum that has been accepted by the Palestinians and the Arabs has been rejected by Israel and by the U.S. So now we have a full-blown catastrophe. Hamas, too, accepts the two-state settlement. And what's worse, Hamas enters into a ceasefire with Israel in June 2008, and according to Israel's official publication, and now I'm quoting it, this is after the massacre began. Israel's official website, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, posted a publication entitled The 6-Month Lull Arrangement. And I'm quoting what Israel's official Ministry of Foreign Affairs publication says. Hamas was careful to maintain the ceasefire it entered into with Israel in June 2008. It was careful to maintain the ceasefire despite the fact that Israel reneged on its responsibility, namely easing the blockade around Gaza. The publication continues. The lull, the ceasefire, was sporadically violated by rocket and mortar shell carried out by rogue terrorist organizations. At the same time, Hamas tried to enforce the terms of the arrangement on the other terrorist organizations, and Hamas tried to prevent them from violating it. So now we have a new disaster. Hamas is abiding by the ceasefire. Well, it gets worse. According to the head of the Shin Bet, Israel's internal security agency, Hamas was interested in renewing the ceasefire. Well, now we have a catastrophic development or sequence of developments, because Israel could no longer justify shunning Hamas. And it would only be a matter of time before international pressure, especially from the Europeans, would be exerted on Israel to negotiate with Hamas. Interestingly, this is not the first time Israel faced such a diabolical threat. An Arab League peace initiative, Palestinian support for a two-state settlement, and a Palestinian ceasefire. And it's not the first time that Israel embarked on provocation and war to overcome this diabolical threat. In the mid-1970s, well before most of you were born, the PLO, the Palestine Liberation Organization, which was headed by a fellow named Yasser Arafat, they came out in support of a two-state settlement. In addition, the PLO, it was headquartered in Lebanon at the time. In June 1981, the PLO entered into, lo and behold, a ceasefire with Israel. So now we have the PLO supporting the two-state settlement, and we have a ceasefire. And then another catastrophe unfolds back then. In 1981, August to be precise, the Saudis put forth a peace plan. And then the Arab League endorses the peace plan. Exactly what happened in the build-up to the current massacre. How did Israel react? The PLO is agreeing to a two-state settlement. The PLO agrees to a ceasefire. The PLO strictly adheres to the ceasefire. The Arab League puts forth a peace plan. It was called back then the Fahd Peace Plan, F-A-H-D, named after, I guess it was King Fahd at the time. How does Israel react? In September 1981, 1 month after the Arab League presents its peace plan, 2 months after the PLO enters into the ceasefire, Israel prepares to destroy the PLO. Why? Let me quote to you from Israel's, he's since passed away, leading strategic analyst, a fellow named Avner Yaniv. He says as follows: Yasser Arafat was contemplating a historic compromise with Israel, but all the Israeli leaders and the main opposition in Israel opposed a full Israeli withdrawal from the West Bank. So what did Israel do? It conducted punitive military raids, listen carefully because it will sound familiar, deliberately out of proportion against Palestinian and Lebanese civilians. Why did it do that? To weaken PLO moderates, strengthen the hand of radical rivals, and to make sure the PLO is inflexible, that it won't support a two-state settlement. But Yasser Arafat, that demonic, diabolical terrorist, he wouldn't budge. He kept to his word on the ceasefire, and he kept saying he wants a two-state settlement. So Israel only had two choices, says Mr. Yaniv: a political move leading to a historic compromise with the PLO, or preemptive military action against it. Well, what does it do? I like this phrase. Mr. Yaniv says, to prevent Arafat's peace offensive, Israel decided to attack. He says the Israeli invasion had been, quote, preceded by more than a year of effective ceasefire. But then Israel began its murderous provocations, the last of which left as many as 200 civilians dead. That was in May 1982. 60 occupants of a children's hospital were killed, and finally the PLO retaliated, fired some shells into northern Galilee, and killed 1 civilian. Now, Israel claims